Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Peace Talks. This is a special mini-series that we've been doing on the Jazz Central mentoring scheme. This is a scheme that's been organised and managed by Arnie Somergy, the jazz bassist and also a teacher at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, and also assisted with by Phil Rose, who heads up Jazz Midlands and also Birmingham Jazz. And the programme itself gives emerging jazz musicians in the West Midlands the opportunity to develop their compositional and performance skills, as well as their profile, their sort of professional profile, network, and so forth, under the mentorship of an established jazz musician on the UK scene. So today we've got the drummer and composer and BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year semi-finalist 2022 as well, Andrew Duncan, joining us. So hi Andrew, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, hi Dave, thanks for having me.
And your mentor on the programme is a saxophonist, Rachael Cohen, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. So yeah, let's kick off, talk a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into music and jazz specifically.
So yeah, I never actually got into jazz straight away. I started off my musical journey actually playing the fiddle, traditional Scottish fiddle.
Okay.
Because I grew up in Aberdeenshire, in Scotland, and I suppose my family's always been musical as well. And my dad plays the piano, my mum's a singer and also played a little bit of violin as well. So I kind of always been around music growing up, and there was always different music going on, a lot of classical music, but also a lot of jazz, a lot of Ella Fitzgerald, Oscar Peterson always was getting played in the house. So I suppose from an early age, I was kind of always around that. And so, yeah, as I said, I started playing fiddle when I was 8 years old. And that was kind of the beginning of my kind of journey into music. And then it wasn't until I was about 10 or 11 when I just started incessantly, well, my mum describes it as incessantly tapping
Okay.
everywhere. And she was like, maybe we should get you some drum lessons. And I was like, well, yeah, that's great. And I had a friend that I went to school with that got drum lessons. So he recommended me his teacher, which I did privately. So, and since then, I haven't really looked back actually. But yeah, in the early days of my kind of like drumming, I did a lot of rock and pop and R&B stuff because that was the kind of thing I used to love listening to. And then I remember my dad played me. It was we always used to listen to CDs in his car, whatever.
Yeah.
And he had like a compilation record of Stephane Grappelli and Django Reinhardt.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I remember listening to this and thinking, "What on earth is this? I've never heard this before." And he went, "Oh yeah, that's jazz."
Mm.
And that kind of sent me into kind of like this vortex of just discovering loads of different music. So it was kind of very specifically, I suppose you could say, early jazz that
Right.
I was listening to. A lot of Louis
And
Armstrong.
what age were you at that time?
So I'm probably about 14 or 15 at this point.
Right. Yeah.
I'm still listening to like loads of rock stuff. Like I'm
Mm.
listening to like Led Zeppelin, The Clash, The
Nothing
Who,
wrong
all
with
that
that.
kind of thing. But then I'm also starting to discover Oscar Peterson, Art Tatum, a lot of stride pianists. As my dad used to play a lot of kind of stride piano. And then it wasn't until I was about 16 that a very similar way that Dave Flanagan, one of my fellow
Mm.
mentees, got into jazz was I did a workshop with the National Youth Jazz Orchestra of Scotland, and
Right.
it made me just realize that wow, this jazz is like this whole new thing that I actually really love the sound of and really enjoyed attempting to play at that point. So then for the next few summers, I did the National Youth Jazz Orchestra summer school um, for until I worked my way up into the actual jazz orchestra itself, which I did for 2 years and did a couple tours with, and that was a lot of fun, and that kind of helped me. Well, it gave me the opportunity actually to play with other jazz musicians.
Yeah.
Because there's when I was growing up, though, a lot of my friends weren't really that much into jazz, and I didn't know any like-minded musicians that were up for kind of playing in
Mm.
that aspect. And also in Aberdeen, there's a great jazz club called the Blue Lamp.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember I went with my mum and my dad quite a few times together to go see people traveling up and doing gigs. But it wasn't until Nijos that I started properly playing jazz. And then from that, I met Andrew Bain and Malcolm Edmonston. And then at that point, I decided I'm about 17, going on 18 now, that I wanted to do music as a career, and specifically jazz. And that's when I started talking to Andrew Bain. He was like, "Oh, you should come down to Birmingham, have a consultation lesson." I did that, and it was great. It was just a total eye opener of all the things that I hadn't discovered and listened to. So at this point, I'm kind of listening to a lot of Herbie Hancock, Miles Davis, Wayne Shorter, as well as some of like the Chick Corea fusion stuff and various other things like that. And yeah, I auditioned for Birmingham, and I suppose they say the rest is history. And I just haven't looked back since then.
Excellent. Oh, that's brilliant to hear. So now, is Birmingham? Have you made Birmingham your home, or?
Yeah, Birmingham's my home now. I try and get back to Aberdeen as much as I can, but it's quite far from Birmingham.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been here now for the past 6 years, actually.
Right. Cool. And you graduated, when did you graduate?
I graduated back in the summer of 2022. So I've been
Right.
out of uni for about 2 years now.
Cool. So yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts. We've been asking the other participants on this. Kind of what's it like, sort of emerging out of your studies into the world of a professional musician in the 2020s?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I was chatting to some friends about this the other day. But we all said we had a sense of, I suppose you could kind of say, naivety almost, where we thought that we would come out of uni and we'd instantly be doing like session work or recording albums or doing things like that. And for my major project in my final year at university, I wrote a suite of music and recorded an album with actually, which is what I'm kind of unearthing again with this project for
Right.
Jazz Central. But I thought, yeah, that'd be great. I'll have something to kind of skyrocket me into the jazz scene. I can start picking up gigs and doing loads of things like that. So I released the album just before I finished uni, and it got a couple of hits on Spotify, but then there was a lot of legwork trying to get it off the ground as well. And the reality of the situation ended up being that coming out of uni, I was really not busy for about 6 months. Everything was
Right.
quite quiet. And it's almost kind of, I suppose you've come from this place of playing all the time at university with loads of different people to then kind of going, almost starting from ground zero again,
Right.
almost, where you've built up so much momentum. It's really difficult to kind of carry on that into the outside world, I suppose you could say. Um, so yeah, it was really interesting at the beginning of kind of straight coming out from uni, of all the extra legwork that I hadn't assumed that I would have needed to do, that
Right.
had to get done in order to kind of promote myself as a musician, as a band leader, as a sideman, as a composer, as an arranger, and just being able to kind of live solely from that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting experience to kind of do that. I also teach as well.
Yeah.
So that was kind of something that I spoke about with my lecturers. Always spoke about the musician's triangle, where there's 3 points of the triangle, and every musician does at least two, where there's like playing, teaching, and arranging or composing. So
Right.
everyone kind of does one of those two, at least two out of the 3 points, just to kind of help them be able to work and live, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And what are your thoughts on kind of technology and as an enabler, or maybe as something that maybe compromises music today?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it definitely enables, and it does both. It enables and compromises, especially. I've never really been horrendously great at a continuous kind of social media presence. So whenever I've got kind of stuff going on, like gigs, or especially the lead up to the release of my album, I was on it all the time, posting Instagram stories, Facebook stories, posting reels, videos, different clips from videos of the studio sessions that we were doing. And I found that the constant posting of that was kind of a little bit mind numbing.
Right.
From the sense of, I know I'm doing all this to kind of get everything out there, but realistically, how many people are seeing it? Am I kind of helping my algorithm in a way where it's reaching further than my peers or people with a Birmingham. And then after kind of all that was done, I was just totally exhausted. I just kind of took a break from social media. So again, I kind of shot myself in the foot in a way where I'd done all this kind of groundwork and footwork to get all that sorted. And then I just kind of stopped, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
think that didn't help me as much as I thought it would. But I was happy with all the stuff that I posted because then that's all on my timeline. That's all out on the
Yeah.
internet. If people don't have me on Instagram or Facebook or anything, they can search my name, my website will come up, and then all the links to my socials will come up. So they can kind of see that kind of, I suppose, that period of time where I was being a continuous poster. But yeah, I find social media can be a great tool. It's just difficult to know difficult to know how to reach other people out with of your kind of follower group or your peer group. And
Yeah.
that's something I've always tried as an artist, and I imagine as a promoter, it's probably exactly the same. Trying to reach new audiences has been pretty difficult.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think with social media, you've got to kind of work in a way that works for you, and don't, a lot of people, and I certainly found it myself, is you feel like you're working for them.
Yeah.
And that's not how it should be. And it's and I actually did an interesting experiment in April this year. I took a whole month off of social media, both personally and free music spoken here, and didn't post anything from the 1st of April to the 31st of April, or 30th of April. And what was interesting is that the first gig we had in April was actually it was actually one of our best attended ones. That was Ian Bellamy. I was just looking up at my board there because that was the dates. Yeah, because I was just trying to remember. So I'd done some promotion of that beforehand, but since then I've not done any. I think I did one paid promotion, but I've stopped doing paid promotion, sponsored promotion. But yeah, I think like you say, it's important to have a presence and for people to be able to find you.
Yeah, definitely.
But at the same time, there's a number of musicians that I've sort of followed along the way, and you see a lot of them are, it's all lifestyle posting and stuff like that, and it's like,
Yeah,
it's not, and if that's the way they want to work, that's grand. But it's yeah, I think it's as you say, you've got to have a presence there, but yeah, you got to make sure that you're working, for your own business. And
yeah,
I think
definitely.
there is a lot of emphasis on, it's different if you're a musician and you're producing music that can, recorded music that people can consume anywhere. But as a promoter for live gigs, it's all about the people in the room. And I'm focusing much more now on, face to face, and word of mouth, and sort of spreading that way, and mailing lists and things like that, rather than too much of a focus on social media.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, no, it's interesting to get your viewpoints. So yeah, let's talk about your project then, that you've developed under this scheme. Another island. You mentioned that was probably sort of, started with some of the music you've written previously. So yeah, do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, so the whole idea from this project was basically I love listening to bands in jazz. So, for example, like Second Great Quintet or Wayne Shorter's quartet with Elvin and
Mm.
McCoy and that kind of thing. And I always love listening to those different albums with the same band and hearing how they've evolved or how their playing's changed with playing each
Okay.
other as well as other people. Same with like the Coltrane Quartet, listening with that classic quartet with Jimmy Garrison, McCoy, and Elvin, and listening to how they were playing stuff kind of at the beginning of their period and then towards all the late train stuff just before it starts going into the kind of more avant-garde things. So the idea for the project was to take my band that I'd used for my honors project for the album recording,
Mm-hmm.
and revisit some of that music and take it to Rachael, my mentor, and see what she had to say, and we could rework some of it, have a look at parts, Because I'm a drummer, my knowledge of harmony and melody isn't that great as opposed to a piano player. So I always used
Right.
to really struggle writing original music. So I was used to go and listen to a song and then try and build a tune from that, from listening to their original music.
Yeah.
So I remember at the time I was listening to a lot of the Brian Blade Fellowship
Hmm.
and that kind of genre, I suppose, of jazz. So I wrote about 7 tunes, kind of based off that, um, and then took them all to Rachel, and I was like, "Look, how can we make this feel more connected in a way that not just the band sound better, but also the whole composition itself sounds a bit more mature, I suppose, rather than
Okay.
just being like that." So, and it turns out that when I was writing all this, I was just throwing a million ideas at each and every song, trying to get as much as I could in to kind of then put out as an album to be like, look, this is something that this is my compositional voice. And basically, Rachel was saying you could write. I took one of the tunes, and we spent actually about 2 hours just on the first maybe 16 bars. And she was like, that could be one tune by itself.
Wow.
Because there were so many different ideas. We broke down
Yeah.
just that one idea, and then suddenly we're thinking about how we can create a whole new composition just from that one 16 bar section and how it can evolve to become something else. This could be the blowing form. This could be a tag that you can add on at the end.
Mm.
This could be like a drum send off into a solo and then coming back to this section. So it kind of made me realize that I just need to almost kind of take a step back when I'm writing.
Yeah.
And come up with an idea, just one single idea, and then see how long I can run with it for. Um, so we kind of stripped back a couple of the original compositions from that record, um, and kind of reworked the order of them. It's still very much the original tunes, but we've now added a couple things and kind of reworked the order, and things come.
Okay.
And then from that, it's inspired me to write some new songs, some new material for the band, which is the same lineup as the album, because that's something I wanted to try and do, was have the same band do the same music
Right.
over a period of time, because that was something I loved doing, was listening to all the old bands playing the
Develop. Oh,
same
yeah. Yeah.
tunes. It's like one of the examples that is really good is listening to Miles Davis playing So What over a
Right.
different period of time. Because you've got the kind of blue recording, which is amazing. It's timeless. It's all just so there. And then you fast forward about 5 years where he plays it again, but with the second quintet. So you've now got what, Tony Williams on kit as opposed
Mhm.
to Jimmy Cobb in the original one, I think, off the top of my head. And it's totally changed. It's a whole new band. It's live, and it's about a million miles quicker.
Yeah.
Um, and just listening to all those different nuances about how a different band after experience of playing it makes it into something different and something almost totally new. Um, so with that in mind, I went about writing some new material from all the things that we spoke about for that same band.
Right.
And because I always used to struggle with coming up with original ideas, I started writing contrafacts, which is taking the harmony of a pre-existing jazz standard or just tune and
Right.
writing new melody over it or rearranging things in some way. So I wrote a couple of contrafacts for the band in an experiment for that, and that's been a lot of fun just to try and come up with, not throwing the kitchen sink at everything that I do. And then the other thing that was actually really beneficial is Rachel brought in some of her original music,
Right.
um,
Okay.
one of which was a contrafact over the Benny Golson tune Stablemates, which we're going to be playing actually on the gigs,
Brilliant.
just to see how something can be reworked in one of many different ways. But also, I wanted kind of Rachel to bring in some of her original music anyway, because I feel like it's been it's a combined effort, this whole mentorship scheme anyway, between mentor and mentee.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see how we all played that as a band after we've played together for on and off basically for about 4 years,
Right.
and how we can and how that can change across multiple gigs and live situations. So the mentorship scheme's gone really, really well. I've got loads out of it from my writing as well as the playing. We've done a few full band rehearsals down at the Vortex as well, and we've just kind of just spent afternoons in there going over the tunes, dissecting things, going over things as a band. And that's what's been so great is the band have also been throwing in ideas. Like
Yeah.
it hasn't just strictly come from myself and Rachel.
Yeah.
We've been having kind of loads of chats about the music and working things out to how it can sound cohesive, not as just songs, but as a whole set as well.
Right. Cool. So yeah, talking to the band, who have we got?
So yeah, so we've got myself on drums, Rachel on alto saxophone. We've got David Bustos on tenor saxophone, who's one of my university mates. We've got Cameron Sheehy on piano, who's a year above me, really killing piano player. And then we've got Sam Casey on the double
Right.
bass.
Yeah.
He's just graduated, but really solid bass player. I've been playing with him a lot in other projects. And then I've also got Julian Durand on electric guitar, who's another one of my university year group mates, who's now moved to London and kind of pursuing all his musical goings on, I suppose you could say. Yeah.
Excellent. So we've got a couple of dates coming out where we're going to hear, as the public, we're going to hear these compositions and these reworkings for the first time. So the first of those will be on Saturday, the 7th of September at 1000 Trades in Birmingham as part of the Jazz Central Festival that's running from the Friday the 6th to the Sunday the 8th. That's in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham. And then you're playing the Stratford Jazz at Stratford Playhouse on Thursday, the 12th of September.
Yep.
Correct. Right. Excellent. So looking forward to that. I'll definitely be up for the 1000 Trades.
Right.
So just like to finish off really with kind of getting your thoughts on how the mentorship program has helped you specifically. Any specific areas that it's helped you to develop your career?
Yeah, definitely. But it's been really beneficial just kind of having a person to go to that's kind of in it, I suppose, who's kind of going through, has done and going through all the things that we're kind of just scratching the surface of coming out of university and kind of jazz education. So it's been really beneficial just to have someone there to ask questions, even as simple as, is this okay to write to a promoter to get a gig? Or how would you change this differently? But on a deeper level, it's been great to have someone who you can just ask, does this composition stand? Because realistically, no kind of musician or punter at a gig is going to tell you like, oh yeah, I think you could do this differently, or I'm not sure if that A flat minor worked the best in that in that bar, like that kind of thing. It's kind of nice just to have someone to throw some ideas with around and get mentoring from. And also just to play with someone of that caliber and that level has been really insightful and made me realize things in my own playing that I would do differently in the sense of being able to support as a rhythm section player as well, having a mentor who isn't a rhythm section player has been quite beneficial to me for being able to play for that soloist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I wasn't able to do with this is I wasn't exactly able to get a drummer mentor a drummer. Otherwise, that would have been an interesting gig to have two drums on there. So it's been really interesting to have that. Also, from a band perspective, all the kind of feedback and coaching she's been able to give to us as a band. Because Rachel's taken the alto chair within the band, and I'm going to see if I can hopefully try and get some more gigs off the back of this mentorship scheme to continue that kind of band relationship, I suppose you could say, to further deeper that connection. Just to make the music as good as it sounds, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. If the music's happening, then people will love it.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's great. Thanks for your time and sharing your thoughts and a bit about the background of the project. As I say, so you're coming up on the Saturday 7th at 1000 Trades and Thursday the 12th of September in Stratford. Looking forward to hearing for hearing the piece, hearing it, and
Yeah, thanks very much.
so thanks so much for your time today, and see you soon.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Dave.